there's a British anchor, BBC anchor, and he tweeted out that Europe has to get used to these attacks. Europe has to get used to this. This is what he tweeted out. What's his name? Jack Posobiec. And think of that. You live in England, so you just have to get used to that. What kind of rubbish is that? No, you don't get used to this. You combat it. Yes, as believers, we pray for the salvation of these radical Muslims. We pray that their eyes would be open to the deception and the murderous nature of what we believe. Yes, we pray for all that, absolutely. And then on a military level, if we're at war, we try to take out the enemy. On the self-defense level, we have secure borders and things like that. But, you know, and I referred to this earlier, Katy Perry's utopian optimism, she didn't just say, let's just coexist. You know, she said, look, no barriers, no borders. We all just need to coexist. And as I said earlier, and as I tweeted out to Katy Perry, they don't want to coexist with you. They want to convert you or kill you. You say, well, isn't it like Christians? No, we want to share the gospel with Katy Perry. If she really knew the Lord growing up, we wanted her to come back to the Lord and really know him. If she never really knew him, was just raised in Christian tradition and never really experienced him for herself, even if she was raised around the gospel, we wanted to really know the Lord. And if she doesn't, we keep praying for her. We're not going to kill her. We keep praying for her. I tweeted this out yesterday that radical Christianity says that the world is evil, and we reach out to unbelievers with the love of the gospel. The radical Islam says the world is evil, and it kills the unbelievers. And look, there are Islamic leaders around the world, major Islamic leaders, that justify this type of behavior in the name of Islam. Hence, because we are fighting an ideology, we must name it and identify it and combat it. And I am sure there are Muslim leaders who have spoken out against the Manchester attacks. I don't doubt it. But where, pray tell, are the mass Islamic protests all around the world? Where are they in Pakistan? Where are they in Afghanistan? Where are they in Saudi Arabia? Where are they in Iran? Where are they in Libya? Where are they in Yemen? Where are they in Islamic country after country in the world? Where are they saying, this is not Islam? We reject this violence. We reject it. Where are Muslim communities in France and Germany and the Netherlands jumping up saying, we reject this. This is not Islam. Could it be that there's too much of a connection to Islam? Let the Muslim world speak.
I want to reiterate what I said this morning about the professionalism of the emergency services and the bravery of the people of Manchester. Through their actions, they proved that cowardice will always be defeated by bravery, that evil can be overcome by good, and that our values, the broad pluralistic values of Britain, will always prevail over the hateful ideology of the terrorists.
Again, the voice of British Prime Minister Theresa May. With all respect to the pain in your country right now, with all respect to the upheaval, with all respect to the trauma, please, please mention Islamic terror by name. And just think, the mayor of London is a Muslim. Did I say he's a terrorist? No. The mayor of London is a Muslim. That's how much Islam has influenced Great Britain. I remember being in Luton, England in 1987. I was preaching there at a number of different churches in England and was being hosted by a pastor in Luton. And in the morning, you heard the prayer call, the Islamic prayer call. And he said, yeah, a mosque has just been built here. This is 1987. He said churches have been trying to get land to build on, and it's been declined. But this mosque was given land to build on, or was able to acquire land to build on. And as I was preaching, I asked the question, who's to say that in 30 years, England won't be a Muslim nation? And people looked at me with kind of scorn and, what? What are you talking about? It's 1987 when I'm 32 years old, some kid over from America. And just so they didn't think I was being biased and trying to speak evil of England. I said, oh, who knows? America could be a communist nation in 30 years. Of course, I didn't believe that for a split second, but I just said it to say, well, yeah, okay, who knows, right? But in point of fact, Islam has had goals on England for years. And Saudi Arabia, not through violence in this case, but through education, through its massive oil money, has underwritten Islamic outreach and the building of mosques in prominent places in major cities around the world as part of Islamic outreach. And some would say that the ideology of Saudi Arabian Islam, Wahhabism, fundamentalist Islam, is a major source of the violence. And people would point out that most of the suicide bombers involved in the 9/11 attacks came from Saudi Arabia, that Osama bin Laden came from Saudi Arabia. These, friends, are realities. Again, when I was on jihadwatch.org last night and looking at article after article, Robert Spencer had written a bunch of them in a couple of days, one example after another of people just not wanting to say radical Islam. And in fact, I'm just going to pull up that page now and see. Let's see here. Okay. Jihad mass murderer's older brother smiles as he is arrested for role in massacre. Isn't it interesting that the father denounced Islamic terror, but his sons seem to embrace at least two of them? New York Times on Manchester jihad mass murderer. No one yet knows what motivated him to commit such a horrific deed. That's what the New York Times says. No one yet knows what motivated him to commit such a horrific deed. What are you talking about? No one yet knows. What? Come on. What? Of course we know. He was radicalized as a Muslim. They've been back and forth to Libya in recent days. Allegedly was shouting out the Quran or quoting the Quran on the streets. And days before it, acting all. We don't know. No one yet knows what motivated him. Islamic State, we swear to Allah that the infidel countries in the West won't have the luxury of security. And on and on. Germany considers fines of up to $56 million for hate speech. Oh, just what we need. Thanks for joining us, friends, on the Line of Fire broadcast. 866-34-TRUTH is the number to call if you'd like to get in on the conversation. One more clip from Theresa May, clip number 3. Again, she is reacting, Prime Minister of England, to the attack in Manchester. By the way, we're looking now on the site of CAIR, the Council of American Islamic Relations, which many believe is really a front for Islamic terrorism or is a friend to Islamic terrorism, and in the past was known to have ties with Hamas. Just looking on their website now for their statement denouncing the attack, renouncing the attack. And let me explain why this is significant, that their silence, if it is silence indeed, is significant. But first, listen to Theresa May once more.
While we mourn the victims of last night's appalling attack, we stand defiant. The spirit of Manchester and the spirit of Britain is far mightier than the sick plots of depraved terrorists. That is why the terrorists will never win, and we will prevail.
Yeah, here's the problem. I appreciate the courageous statement. I appreciate her saying we're not going to bow down. But right now, England, the nation of England, is on critical alert for another terrorist attack. You have soldiers marching through the streets. Life is not going on like normal. In that sense, the terrorists have already won. And, let me say it again, unless you name it, radical Islamic terrorism, then you will not look at the problem holistically and wisely. Am I saying all Muslims should be profiled? No. All terrorists should be profiled. And to the extent that the terror connects to Islam, then you act accordingly. with the help of non-terrorist Muslims. And if they don't stand with you and help, then they are saying, I have greater solidarity with Muslims who are terrorists than I have with the country in which I live. That is saying something. And thus far, if I'm correct, I qualify this, if I'm correct in what I've heard, British intelligence has not gotten a lot of help from the Muslim community in the recent past to help expose terror, if I'm correct. But here's why I say it's significant if groups like CARE and other major Muslim organizations do not actively, aggressively, and unequivocally denounce this and say this has nothing to do with Islam, and we are working to root this out of mosques and root this out of our community wherever it is found. Let's say that it's a few years back and it's one of the very few, still inexcusable, but very few attacks by Christians on abortion doctors. Yes, there have been people that, from what I can tell, are Christian, and they get twisted in their faith, and they think, I have to take the law in my own hands. Just like someone was coming into my house to steal my children and kill my children, now someone's trying to kill someone else's baby in the womb. I got to take the law in my own hands, and they kill an abortion doctor. Now just realize, we are passionate in the pro-life movement. The pro-life movement has been active for decades, even before Roe v. Wade, and all the more since Roe v. Wade. And yet, with all the passion, you don't hear about abortion clinics being bombed. You don't hear about abortion doctors being killed. You don't hear about that because we're pro-life. So one of the few times, again, inexcusable, whether it's 5 or 1 or 10, it's inexcusable. One of the few times this has happened, what is done immediately? Every pro-life organization immediately says, this is not the gospel, this is not our faith, this is not who we are, this is not what we believe, this is wrong, this is aberrant, this has nothing to do with Jesus. Correct? Immediately. We don't qualify it. We don't say we reject all terrorist acts, including Islamic terror and Hindu terror and Jewish terror. No, we just say this is not the gospel, this is not Jesus, this is not our faith. We renounce it, we have nothing to do with this, we repudiate it, period. End of subject. Done. And if some group rose up, say like a Westboro Baptist group, they're not going around killing people, but they're espousing hatred. God hates fags. God hates America. God hates Sweden. When tsunami devastated so many parts of the Far East and horrific suffering took place, and there were, say, Swedish tourists who were killed in it, Westboro Baptists were rejoicing. They got what they deserve. They got what they deserve. When someone comes back, say, killed by an IED in Iraq, one of our heroic soldiers, their body shipped back to the States, Westboro Baptists will have a protest at the funeral saying, we have a fag army and this is divine judgment. We all, immediately when we hear that, we renounce it, we denounce it, we say that is not our faith, that is not the gospel, that is not Jesus, that is not who we are, that is not what we believe. And yet, when this happens over and over again in the name of Islam, yes, there are some who speak out, but there are many who don't. And from my perception, most who don't. And most just say, well, this is not our faith. This is aberrant. Well, then work with intelligence in the West and say, okay, here, let's work together to uproot this from our mosques. And when we have one of these radical leaders, we ourselves as a community are going to excommunicate the person. And we are going to announce from every mosque and in all of our literature. You say it happens. No, it doesn't happen nearly the way it needs to happen. We're going to say you blow yourself up, you go to hell, not paradise. This needs to happen. So Katie Hopkins, well, tell you what, before I get to Katie Hopkins, I mentioned her yesterday. Here, let me play this clip. And again, this is the wrong thing to be emphasizing at this time. Johnny, grab clip number 4. This is Christine Marsh on ABC, and what is Christine Marsh reporting on this? What's ABC worried about in the immediate aftermath of the Manchester radical Islamic terror attack. Listen.
And Martha, as you said, the people in Manchester are determined to kind of go back to daily life, but this is also likely to inflame anti-Islamic sentiment across Britain, across Europe.
It sure could, George. You know, Manchester itself is a very multicultural city. There's a large Muslim population with many there for generations, so headscarf attracts little attention there. And notably, Manchester did not vote in favor of Brexit, but an attack like this, as you said, is much bigger than Manchester itself and will likely create backlash, depending, of course, on the details of this attack.
Yeah, so it's going to create backlash. That is what is going to happen. That is the concern. Hey, it is a concern. I recognize that. You need to tell people don't go out hating all Muslims now, but the Muslim community can help in this regard. The Muslim community can say, we are working to eradicate this. Okay, let's see. I'm going right now to the Council of American Islamic Relations, CARI, C-A-R-I, looking on their website, and here we go. There's May 23rd, so yesterday. Plenty of time to report on this. What's the lead article? CAIR DFW asked Texas sheriff to reaffirm commitment to equal justice after Islamophobic rant. That's the problem. Islamophobia. Another from yesterday. Muslim civil rights group launches Inspired to Care video series. Care to offer Ramadan Know Your Rights as an employer webinar. Where is the message being shouted out? Now here, it gets worse. It gets worse. Are you ready? I'm going to quote from my article. If you haven't read it yet, it's up on our website, AskDrBrown.org, Why We Must Name, Identify, and Combat the Ideology of Radical Islam. There is a book by a Catholic scholar of Islam. He is not a Zionist, by the way, Samir Khalil Samir. And in his book, 111 Questions on Islam, I cite this in my article. He pointed to the final document released at the end of the summit held in Beirut in January 2002, in which more than 200 Sunni and Shiite ulema, which is scholars, coming from 35 countries participated. They were discussing suicide attacks in Israel and whether those could be justified in the name of Islam, which otherwise opposes suicide. So here's the context. It is 2002, all right? More than 200 Sunni and Shiite Islamic scholars from 35 countries participated in this. Islam teaches against suicide clearly. But what about a suicide bomber who blows himself up to kill Israelis? Is that justified or not? Here's what they had to say. 200 Islamic scholars from 35 countries. Stay tuned, I'll tell you what they say. Thanks, friends, for joining us on today's broadcast, coming your way live from Washington, D.C., getting ready to speak at a conference for the Family Research Council, Tony Perkins, this week before heading home. 866-348-7884. Okay, I want to get back to England, Katie Hopkins on Tucker Carlson in a moment. But first, here is what 200 Islamic scholars in 2002 from 35 countries said about suicide bombers in Israel. Are you ready? So here are Muslims blowing themselves up to kill Jews in Israel. The document stated this: the actions of martyrdom of the Mujahideen, the freedom fighters, are legitimate and have their foundation in the Quran and in the Prophet's tradition. They represent the most sublime of martyrdoms because the Mujahideen accomplished them in full conscience and freedom of choice. That is their final statement. That is part of their final document. That although suicide is prohibited by Islam, in these cases, it is legitimate. Notice, and these actions have their foundation in the Quran and in the Prophet's tradition. Could it be any more clear than that? This is at the very least a valid expression of Islam. And because it's just on all fronts where Islam is threatened by the world and worldliness, then you carry out these acts on all fronts. 2001, another prominent Muslim leader from Egypt, Yusuf al-Qaradawi, he claimed, quote, "Nobody can declare that it is unlawful to fight with all means against the Israeli occupation." And he wrote, "Jihad on the way to God and in the defense of the country, of homeland, and of sacred things is today an obligation for all Muslims more than in any other period in the past." And he made clear this did not just apply, quote, in Palestine, it applied also in Kashmir and in other hot spots in the world. Noted Muslim leaders saying, go ahead and blow yourself up and kill civilians in the name of Allah because we are at war and it is justified. Yes, that is sick. And yes, that is part of Islamic ideology. So if it is an aberration, then let every Muslim around the world that is a true Muslim fight against it. And if it's not an aberration, then own up to it and say, we have a sick religion. Is that too much to ask?